my shoes and out the door. 5, I'm alive. 6, 7, 8, feeling great.
Hello, BYWG Podcast Tribe. This is Dr. Noah. For the month of November, we are featuring an awesome book of the month and an incredible course, or should I say masterclass. As a reminder, all the links for the book and the course of the month will be listed in the show notes in iTunes, in our weekly newsletter, and on our website at www.beyondyourwildestgenes.com at the Listen Now tab. Our book of the month is Estrogeneration, How Estrogenics Are Making You Fat, Sick, and Infertile, by Anthony G.J., Ph.D. Tribe, I highly suggest you pick up this book and read it. Our course of the month is the Keto Masterclass, a 45-day program to kickstart your keto lifestyle created by our friend and author of The Paleo Solution and Wired to Eat, Rob Wolf. For a short time, this course is offered at an incredibly low rate of $49. The link for this course will be in all our monthly materials. In the podcast archives at the Listen Now tab on our website at www.beyondyourwildestgenes.com, you can listen to Dr. Mike interview Rob on March 11th, 2017, and most recently on October 15th, 2018. Enjoy the upcoming podcast.
Hello and welcome back to Beyond Your Wildest Genes podcast. This is Dr. Noah DeCoyer and I'm your co-host. Today I'm very excited to invite fellow chiropractor Dr. Libby Darnell to the podcast. We both were interviewed for the Healthy Kids the Easy Way Summit, and I was so intrigued with Dr. Libby's interview that I asked the host of the summit for an invite. So thank you so much, Dr. Libby, for accepting and being on the show today.
Oh, and thank you. I'm so grateful that you're bringing this message to your audience. It's so vitally important that people are learning all about this.
Yeah, you know, for so long it was kind of like hidden in the alternative circles, and I think it's finally getting out in the mainstream. And of course, we're talking about EMFs, or electromagnetic frequencies. So let me do your bio, and then we'll jump right in. Okay?
Sounds great.
Dr. Libby is the founder of Revived Living and creator of the Revived Life program. She's a functional medicine practitioner, doctor of chiropractic, wife, and mother of an adorable 3-year-old. Dr. Darnell has written her own nutritional programs, taught hundreds of one-on-one workshops throughout the Chicagoland area on health and happiness, and won Illinois Top Ten Chiropractor in 2016. After getting multiple referrals from her local coaching clients, Dr. Darnell created her online coaching university to help her transform her clients' lives internationally. She's also an expert in EMF safety and has advocated for electromagnetic radiation hazard awareness for years after experiencing its damaging effects personally and in the lives of her friends and family members. Holy moly, Dr. Libby, you have a busy life.
Yes, it's crazy, but I love it that way. You know?
Yeah. You know, I do too. I always say my life is busier when I'm running around just a little bit on the edge of crazy.
Yes. And you know, it's funny because I've got an integrated medical office in the Chicagoland area. And so our team, I've somehow just hired people that are just like me. Like if it's not busy and we're not bopping from room to room, the team is not happy. So, hey, we're not alone.
Yep. I agree. So how about just a little bit of just fleshing out your bio a little bit? You know, how you got where you are today?
Yeah. So my husband and I started our chiropractic clinic in 2010 and, you know, hit the ground running. You know all about that and, you know, just loved what we did. And after a while, I'm a morning person, you know, so I like get out of bed every day and be before my alarm and I'm just happy and go from minute one, really. And then lo and behold, I started getting really fatigued. And at first you just think, well, yeah, I mean, I'm working hard. Of course I'm going to be a little tired. But then it kept getting worse and worse. And it got to the point where I struggled just getting out of bed. And I'd go to work, you know, just crawl out of bed, go to work. And when I would be done with work, I'd come home and crawl back into bed. And that was my life for a little while. And then it got to the point where I couldn't really articulate words very well. And so I could be talking with a patient and know what I want to say. And I felt like I couldn't say it. And I got really intense headaches on my left temple side, which now I call my EMF detector. But so that's how I knew that something was really wrong. And then the worse that it got, the point where I was like, okay, I'm either going to be committed or something's going to change. I turned to my husband and I said, okay, honey, like the next step I know is I'm going to start hearing voices. Like my whole personality was changing. But luckily I'm in the health field. I don't know what I would have done if I wasn't in the health field. So I just called everybody I knew and I said, what's going on? And I finally was connected with someone who said, yep, you are really hypersensitive to electromagnetic frequencies. And that is the issue that's affecting you. And I thought, okay, I mean, if that's what you tell me, all I care about is getting well. That's all I care about. I spent so much money, so much time chasing other things that when this was brought up, I thought, okay, let's fix it. Fine, fix it. So I hired, a bunch of experts to come in, fix my home, fix my office. And since that time, now that's a lot of what I teach with clients is there are a lot of people like me out there that are sensitive to this stuff. And even if you're not sensitive to it, it still does affect your health. Even if you don't get headaches or even if you don't notice, weird changes with your health, it still is going to affect you. So that's why I talk so much about it. And while I'm so excited that people like you invite me to talk about a kind of random topic, really, because it's so, so vital. And I know it can really, really save some lives.
Yeah, so like I mentioned prior to starting the recording, I look at this interview as kind of like EMF 101. So let's start there, just so we're all on the same page. What is EMFs?
Yeah, so electromagnetic frequencies, also called electromagnetic radiation, and then radio frequency is another term that's used a lot. And you can kind of think of them as being somewhat interchangeable. So essentially, at the end of the day, it's foreign frequencies that our bodies are not used to. So you and I, we have our own vibrational frequencies. Every animal, every plant, every living thing since dawn of time has had its own set vibrational frequency. Even the sun has a natural frequency to it. And we're used to that. That's how our bodies are supposed to be in harmony. And then, 100 and so years ago, we introduced electricity. And there's actually a really good book on this topic for people that want to read on it more that's called Dirty Electricity. And it is kind of a retrospective study on the introduction of electricity that started in cities and then slowly expanded into rural areas, and how childhood leukemia rates skyrocketed, depression, suicides, and at the same time that this was expanding. And so essentially we're around these foreign frequencies. And think of the most common sources just to kind of give people a visual. Your cell phone. I'm on my cell phone right now because I'm traveling, and usually I'm on a hardwired computer connection and I know it's completely safe, but I'm on a cell phone, but I'm on my headset, not Bluetooth, a wired headset. So my phone is away from me as much as I possibly can do. And your computer, televisions. We think about all this Bluetooth everywhere. So when I was in the airport today and I'm walking around seeing everybody with these earbuds, the Bluetooth earbuds, and you're putting this frequency right by your brain for how many hours of the day. And I just know we're going to see cancer rates go up. I mean, it's researched. The stuff is researched. You don't have to argue with it. They put an insert. When you buy an iPhone, there's an insert that says, don't keep this within so many, centimeters of your body, which of course, nope, we just set it right by your brain. But that's essentially what's going on is we're around these alternative frequencies that are impacting our health. And for people that might be a little bit skeptical or think, no, it couldn't possibly be that bad, they wouldn't release this technology if it wasn't safe. That is absolutely not true. So on my website, there's tons of research. I have a whole section on this topic and research. So if anybody I know a lot of people are going to get fired up listening to this and they're going to go, hey, I'm going to go home. I'm going to make some changes. And if you hit a wall with your spouse, send them to the research section because it's pretty extensive on all the different sources and the different health outcomes that are linked to it. So really at the end of the day, that's why I'm always going to be talking about it because this can affect literally everyone.
Yeah, the research is really important because, when my partners and I lecture, and we do quite often, we always say this isn't Dr. Mike or Dr. Noah or Dr. Wanda Lee's thoughts. This is research, peer reviewed, random control, whatever. And here it is, to look at it. And people need to see that and understand that this isn't some sort of airy-fairy, not true, maybe kind of sort of thing. This is real, and it's definitely affecting our lives in a big way, for sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So next question then is just one step up the chain is how do EMFs affect our body?
So you can think of your body like an orchestra, and you've got a conductor, who's conducting this symphony. And in your body, photons, you think back to, high school, you got your atom, you break it down to electrons, protons, neutrons. Well, we have something called photons. They're in every part of our body that help organize things in sense of space and time. And so what happens is when we're introduced to alternative frequencies, and, you and I are chiropractors, we know the body's designed to heal. We can be introduced to a short-term, exposure of any sort of toxin, even if it's not electromagnetic pollution, that's another term for it, but any sort of toxin. So when people have, a glass of wine or have a Snickers bar at Halloween, we're designed to heal. So we can, have that exposure short-term and then heal from it. But what's happening is now we're getting these long-term exposures. Let me just give a couple of quick examples. I'm in a hotel right now surrounded by dirty electricity, which I'll elaborate on what that is. And then there's like 1,000 Wi-Fi hotspots in this hotel. And so I travel with a few things that help me stay well. But when I go home, I'm still going to need a day of recovery. I always leave one day whenever I'm traveling to kind of recover, just because I know I can't keep these exposures and then go right back into work and be useful to anybody. So it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. And then we talk about the potential of 5G rolling out. So we're always exposed to these things. And so what it does is it actually throws our photons into chaos. So now you've got the symphony, you've got your body's violin and your body's cello, and they have no idea what to do. They're not being led. They're not being instructed. And so the end result to that is we can experience a wide variety of symptoms. There's no one EMF symptom. And that's why when I'm working with clients, if somebody could come to me that just says, well, I have heavy metal exposure or I've got parasites, and I'm like, yep, but there's people that when they get sick, you're not limited to one thing. And this usually ends up being a thing that does need to be addressed with most people. Now, another way that it affects us on a cellular level. So if we think, you and I are probably, 72 billion cells in our body. So on a cellular level, we have something called mitochondria. And for the non-science people, mitochondria is simply your energy house for your cell. So it's producing something called ATP, and that's energy for your body. But what happens when we're exposed to these frequencies is it degrades our cellular membranes and degrades the membranes around these mitochondria. And so we can actually see this on blood tests. My niece especially, my niece was diagnosed with a glioblastoma and was unfortunately, she went to heaven within 2 months of her diagnosis. And in between her diagnosis and the time that she left for heaven, we had her tested. We actually flew to Spain and met with the Dr. Raymond Helu. And we did that because he's got a machine that does hyperthermia, meaning you're raising the temperature of the body, but it would only harm cancer cells, not the surrounding tissue. And he did acknowledge that by the time we got there, it was really things were not looking good. And when we did her blood work, you could see, if you think about red blood cells and how they kind of float through your bloodstream, they should kind of look like dinner plates, with a nice border, big, thick dinner plates floating through your bloodstream. And hers were just like, it looked like, if I'm going to stick with a dinner plate analogy, a paper plate that had been soaked in water. This flimsy little nothing floating around. You couldn't see any membranes at all. And he looked at us right when he put this up and was kind of going through it. He looked at us and he goes, oh, this is an EMF issue. And I thought, holy cow, in one family that we could have so many people so sensitive. And we all ended up getting tested. There were 6 family members there, and 4 out of the 6 were highly sensitive to EMFs. And I just think it's so interesting. So my first symptom, if we want to relate it back to just symptoms, my first symptom was fatigue. My body's not producing ATP like it used to. So extreme fatigue. And then it turned into headaches. And for her, my niece, she had 0 symptoms until she had cancer that was uncurable. It's around your brainstem. You can't do anything about it other than potential radiation, which they acknowledged wouldn't actually save her life. So that's also one of the reasons that I talk about this so much. But at the end of the day, I think that's why it's so important that people understand you can have any symptom, because this can affect any part of the body.
You mentioned a few things there, and I'm so sorry to hear about your niece. That's a terrible, terrible story. But you mentioned like a sensitivity EMF. There's actually thought now that people can, just like food, like there's people that are allergic to EMFs. Is that almost like a fair statement, or something that's kind of being seen more in the literature in the space right now?
Yeah, so you can think of it like leaky gut syndrome. Like, we all know it's true, but modern medicine will say that it's like not even a diagnosis, but yet we can actually like see it on testing that somebody will have leaky gut. The diagnosis for this is called EHS, or electromagnetic hypersensitivity. Okay. And I can tell you, people that I have clients that turned completely, essentially allergic to EMFs. And it's almost like the body has this built up tolerance, and you're filling up this bucket of exposure, and it's not just full of electromagnetic frequency pollution. It's, filled up with GMO foods and Roundup exposure, and you got a smart meter installed in your home, which we'll talk about. And so eventually that bucket tips over. And then as soon as your bucket tips over, and a lot of people I'm sure listening have been through that, as soon as that happens, it's hard to get healthy again. And you have to do a lot of things and make sure that you're eliminating a lot of sources. So if people can just simply make a few changes before that bucket ever tips over to make sure that they don't ever get there, they're going to have such an amazing quality of life.
I agree, and I'm excited soon to start touching on those points. The second thing you said in a few minutes ago was dirty electricity. Now, is dirty electricity in some ways synonymous with EMS, or are these a little bit different topics?
Same topic. Okay. So when we're talking about EMFs, there's different forms of sources. So dirty electricity is one, like a cell tower is going to be one. Radio frequencies are going to, so there's different types, but all under the same umbrella of EMFs. So just to keep things simple, I just use that term EMF and keep it real simple so that people don't have to worry about which source is what type and that kind of thing. But essentially, dirty electricity is wiring in our homes, our schools, and our work environment that's inefficient. And so what happens is it creates something that technically is called transient energy, meaning there's bursts, dims and bursts in energy around that wiring. And so it actually does come out into our environment. And you can measure this. At the time I paid an electrical engineer to come in and measure all of this in my home. So his name is Dave STETZER. He is a senior member of the IEEE, which essentially just means he's as high as you can get from an electrical engineering standpoint. And he speaks at Mayo Clinic on this topic. So I paid a lot of money to have him come down to my home and to my office. And he was able to bust out these big, electrical pieces of equipment that test for all sorts of sources. And it was so interesting. I had never even heard, why would you? If you hadn't just listened to Noah's podcast, why would you have heard of dirty electricity? And so he sat there and you could take measurements from different outlets and see how high it was, and to kind of give people a frame of reference. When you're measuring from an outlet, you're doing so because that's the access point to wires. It's not like it's just coming, it's not like dirty electricity is coming out of outlets. It comes out of the walls. And so he was measuring, and on the meter that you use to get a digital measurement, you want to see under 50 units and ideally under 30. And my home, which we had unfortunately renovated to be a complete new smart home, you name it. I could turn the thermostat down from my phone at 3 a.m., tell the fridge what to do from across the room. It was one of those, it was like worst case scenario, worst case. And my readings maxed out the actual meter in my home. So long story short, people do have the ability to purchase one of these meters. And I now have a big warehouse of all this stuff, and I keep it at like the lowest possible price point that I can for people because I want everyone to have access for this. So the meter itself is around $100. And what I typically recommend people do is like go in on it, you know, with a friend or a neighbor and just get a meter and like share the cost. Because then when you travel, like I travel with one. So in my hotel, I know where to install my filters. And that's the end game. So you have your meter, and then if you have high readings in different points of your home, and it just totally depends on how your house is wired, you're simply going to install a filter, and that will help harness. It takes away all of that transient, that excess energy, and it harnesses it into this small filter. And the price point for filters is around $35. So that for me was my biggest issue. You know, we also had a cell phone tower near our home, but luckily it doesn't come, it only comes into one wall, and that was a pretty easy fix. But the dirty electricity in my environment was what tanked me, what tipped my bucket over, so to speak.
Dr. Libby, let me stop you there, because those, after, you know, listening to your interview on that summit that I mentioned, I you know, started investigating your website, and those those meters and the filters, those probably interested me more than anything else. And when the meter, I mean, is it simple as you hold the meter up to your outlets and just see? Is it as simple as that?
Yes, it is literally that simple. You plug it into it. You're actually plugging it in to measure it directly on the wire. So you're plugging it in. Okay. You see an immediate reading. And then the nice thing is, as you install a couple filters in that area, you'll notice that those readings come down. Right. And so every home is different. Some homes, because, you know, I've tested homes in our local area, my Chicagoland area, and some homes might need, you know, 2 meters here, 10 meters in another home. My home, because it was so bad, needed 60. I would say on average, you're looking at maybe 20 filters. And I'm sorry, I was saying meters and I meant filters, so I apologize. But you'd only buy 1 meter, it will last you for life, and your filters will last you for life. But you know, some homes need 2 filters, some homes need 10 filters, and some homes need more.
And the filter just plugs into the outlet just like the meter?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So then what I did is I just bought, like I went to Home Depot and I bought $3 outlet taps is what they call them, but it's just a prong, so that a 3-pronged outlet, so that when you plug a meter in, you're not losing a space in your outlet. When you plug a filter in, you're not losing a space in that outlet. You actually get a whole new one. Now I do have examples and everything on my website of that, so you can see it.
Yeah, that was one of the most practical. That's something that I'm going to do in my home. And I really found pretty interesting, and I love it too. It's important to be able to not just think something works, actually know something works by being able to plug it in and then testing it right there and saying, okay, it's dampening that dirty electricity.
Oh yeah, and if budget is a concern for people, I just recommend, like, especially for children, because children are more susceptible to this, just simply because their bone structure is less dense than ours. They're growing. So, for example, their skulls are thinner. So there's research showing cell phone use with children is horrific. It can penetrate the majority of the brain, whereas in adults, because our skull is thicker, it just can't penetrate as far. So for that same reason, children are like that's my biggest focus. If you can make sure that they have an appropriate, safe space to sleep at night, they can heal. You know, there are things in our world that we can't control. Wireless is going to be everywhere. But if you at least can give your children a safe space to heal at night, they're most likely, with blessings, going to be able to heal from their exposure. So for me, for my child, what that looks like is I have 2 filters in his bedroom. And if budget's a concern and you have children, get 2 filters and plug them in to each child's bedroom. That's going to take care of dirty electricity. And if you've got wireless in your home, put it on a timer, just like your Christmas lights. And again, I have links for everybody, like where I got them on Amazon. Like if you're like me and I hate going to physical stores anymore, I'm spoiled. I get everything off Amazon. So if you can simply turn your Wi-Fi and you plug your router directly into this outlet timer, just like Christmas lights, It'll turn on when you want it on, off when you want it off. You never have to think about it again. So that way their little bodies have a chance to heal at night. You got rid of the wireless, that signal's not transmitting, the dirty electricity is gone, and then just take a look around your home. Do you see cell towers nearby? Do you see radio towers nearby? The place where I get, if you do have one and it's close, these are all things that you can measure to see how bad it is. And what I guess the end result there is what I did is I got a window shield that blocks everything. Let's say you have a cell phone tower on the north side of your house. You only have to shield the north side, and you don't shield the whole house. You're just shielding the windows because it can come right through your windows. So there's fabric for curtains if you wanted to do it that way, but I wanted to be able to have my curtains open. So I got simple shielding material for the windows, and it's clear. You can't see it. If you look real closely, yes, there's metal in it, and that's what makes it a shield. And I got that from EMF.com. And they have lots of things too, but that's the best source and the cheapest source for home shielding. If someone is right by a cell tower that's going into your kid's bedroom, please get that.
Oh, that's extremely, extremely important. Are there any other common sources of EMFs that we haven't talked about yet? Was we talked about routers and phones, and what are we missing, or what haven't we talked about yet?
Yep. So one of the biggest things I want people to do, well, there's two big things I want them to do that will cost them no money just to look into right now. First thing is walk around your home, and if you see those swirly light bulbs, those are compact fluorescent light bulbs or CFLs, take those out. Get rid of them. Get them. They're the worst source of dirty electricity and other sources in your home. Like it's horrific. Like, I'll work with people and from a chiropractic perspective, and their child's headaches aren't going away, but yet their night light is a CFL light bulb right by them all night long. And you can actually measure this. So when I measure this for people, people that just need to see it to believe it sort of thing, I'll actually hook up a voltage meter, and you can check the voltage running through my body just by putting my hand near a compact fluorescent light bulb. What you want to switch them out with are going to be incandescent light bulbs, like think what Thomas Edison made back in the day, the incandescent light bulb, or halogen light bulbs. And I do link to all of that stuff for people. Whenever anybody listens to this, I send them to one page, and then that way I follow up with them via email of all the links of where to get certain things, like links to, a Home Depot website. What are you looking for when it comes to incandescents? Here's a brand, order it, make it simple. So that's very inexpensive. Switch out your light bulbs. Another thing in that kind of realm, so to speak, dimmer switches. If you have dimmer switches, and when I got really sick, I had just installed 20 dimmer switches in my home. Anytime you're dimming light, and you're having that light bulb use less energy, the excess energy actually will come out into your environment. And so again, you can test it. You can see that affecting you. And so what I did is I went to Home Depot and I got the $1.25 little up and down standard switches, and I swapped them all back for the old school kind. Same thing with like your Nest thermostat that runs on wireless. I loved that. It was so great. But nope, I went to Home Depot and I got a $15 thermostat. And I have to go push a physical button, but it's not harming my health at all. And I'm a functional human again, so totally worth it. And then the last thing that I think is probably the biggest thing that people really need to know and be aware of are smart meters. So smart meters, for people that don't know, you remember back in the day, you'd have somebody walk through your yard, in a yellow vest, and they'd take a reading from a meter that is measuring the energy usage from your home. And you also have them for gas and water. And so what this new invention is a smart meter where instead of paying someone to physically come take the reading, it's transmitted wirelessly. And I've got a couple of stories around this topic because it is such a big offender. I mean, it will just max out meters on a continuous basis. And then, and people are losing their health drastically, very quickly when these are getting installed on homes. So I live in Illinois, and I live in a state where you can still opt out. And so I was able to opt out. So I opted out when they sent out a letter saying this is going to happen. And I thought, haha, not. So I posted signs on the side of my home by my meter saying, do not install. I've opted out. And then a printout of your legal right to do so, which again, I do link to, for people that want to do the same thing. And luckily for me, and this is really lucky, my basement flooded while I was working one day. My parents drove in to kind of try to clean up my flooded basement, and she ended up having to chase off this guy off my property who was still going to install a smart meter, even though I'd opted out and posted signs. And I mean, literally, it was kind of almost an altercation. Like, that's how much they want to install the meters. And then I went on vacation over this Christmas break, and same thing at my work. I had opted out and posted signs. When I walked in the door, I got this crazy headache, just like I used to years ago. And I thought, what changed? What happened? So I ran all around. I'm like, did some of my team members, did they turn wireless on? Did they take out all my filters? Like, what did they do? And it dawned on me, I wonder if they installed a smart meter anyway. So I didn't want to go stare at it in the face because I've measured these and I know how bad they could be. So I called. And I got the nicest woman on the phone, but I said, hey, I opted out. Did you guys install a smart meter? Because I feel terrible. And she goes, oh, sweetie, we installed 6. It was horrible. So yeah, I had to leave my office. And then I called Dave STETZER, who had tested my home, and said, what do I do? And he said, okay, I'm going to send you some shielding material. I don't even care if you duct tape it up on your wall, but it'll stop that signal from being transmitted into your office. So if anybody has a smart meter, what you're going to do is look at it and you'll see something that says an FCC number. I used to have a very different description for looking for smart meters, but they're making smart meters now look like analog meters. So people will look at it and think they've got an analog and not know that they've got a smart meter. So the dials, the old analogs are like metal and old dials, and so that's what I have. But now they're installing these meters with those old school dials to make them look like they're not a smart meter, but they are. So what you just need to do is take this shielding material, and again, it's something I carry. It's really inexpensive. It's like $35, and just put it behind your meter. And I send you videos on how to install it. So, it's very simple. It'll take you 30 seconds. When I did it, my headache was gone within 45 minutes. I couldn't believe it. I was just crazy. And along that line, not to hammer this to death, but I had a client come in, and I had known her for years, and from a chiropractic perspective, and she's this happy-go-lucky, just great woman. She came in tears and just said she was suicidal and she wanted to take her own life. And I'm thinking, what happened? And I asked her, and of course nothing has happened. And she is grasping at straws, doesn't know what to do. She's recently engaged. Her life is great. So why all of a sudden did she have this massive depression? And, from a functional medicine perspective, I thought, okay, well, let's run a couple tests. And I thought, you know what? Let's just save some money. You go home and see if they install the smart meter. And it was a long shot. A lot of things can make people be depressed, but it was a long shot. And, because this was so quick though, that was my big my big red flag. So she went home, looked, and then called her energy company. The day this happened to her, the very day that she felt this way, they'd installed a smart meter just outside of her headboard of her home the night before. So she was having this signal blasting, and on hers it was about once every 30 seconds for the 8 hours a night that she was sleeping. And the research behind this stuff says, hey, she was lucky she got depressed because a lot of people are getting cancer. And she could do something about it. It was fixable. So sorry, that was kind of a long-winded answer for the last question there.
No, that's important. Now, you seem to have a vast knowledge on products and how to protect yourself from these.
Yeah.
And I've tinkered with some products over the years, and I'd like to ask your opinion on them. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I'm just personally curious. So if you don't have any experience with the product, or you rather not comment, please just let me know. But
yeah,
one of the products that's been out on the market forever to kind of boost or supposedly boost your bioenergetic field is the Q-Link. Any thoughts on the Q-Link?
Yes. So here's my blanketed little state before we talk about this. I will not promote anything that I can't prove works with testing.
Right.
So I do believe that there are other things on the market that help. Q-Link is one of them. I actually wear it, but I cannot prove it. I can't prove it via testing. I've done everything to try to prove it, and I can't, but I still do recommend it. I just always tell people, hey, I can't tell you why, but this really helps me, because I notice when I forget it. And so for Q-Link, for people that don't know, you can wear it like a pendant around your neck, and it's just on a cloth cord. And I'm a girl. I don't want to wear something like that around my neck. So I actually keep it in my bra because it doesn't matter. It just needs to be kind of near your heart. But I wear it. They also sell little cell phone stickers. And again, on testing, none of the stickers work, right? So, they can reduce, but anytime that if your cell phone is transmitting a signal, that sticker's not worth anything, so I actually do carry one even on my website, and it's got a little video saying, hey, this is a mild help, but don't you dare put this on your phone and then hand your phone to your child and think that they're safe. They are not. If that phone works at all, you're having a form of exposure. And so, yeah, I do like the Q-Link, and I think it's my 2 cents, and I don't know. I'm not a scientist in this realm. My 2 cents is I think it has more to do with harmonizing our own body's energy fields. We're these energetic highways. We've got these meridian pathways running through us. And so for me, I think that's why I felt better. And another possibility is that the reason I notice it when I forget and I feel worse, it also could be placebo, but who cares? Like if I'm feeling better, that's the important part. If you're feeling better and functioning better, that's the important part. So that's my long-winded answer to the Q-Link and to anything having to do with cell phone fixes. The Defender Shield actually seems to be a pretty good one.
Yeah, that's why I was just going to ask you. Yeah. I literally have a Defender Shield mat right under my laptop right now. So that was another one I was curious what your thoughts are on.
Yes. Yeah, that one appears to be pretty good. Another thing that people can do, and it sounds totally crazy, but it works along the same lines. Like metal, any form of metal is going to be a shield. Now, I don't like it when people... I've worked with people that have shielded their home, quote unquote, working with someone and spent thousands of dollars to shield their home. And they use metal, and metal does work. You're blocking everything from coming into that home, the whole house. People will put it behind their drywall. However, if you've got a wireless router or a cell phone in your home, you've got that signal now pinging all inside that house, and people will get worse. They feel worse. And now the same thing is true with clothing. You can buy EMF protective clothing, and it does work. It really does. On testing, you'll see nothing will transmit into your body. However, if you're in contact with it, like that energy is actually sitting on your clothing. And so if you're touching your clothes, it transmits directly into your body. So same thing with bed canopies. Bed canopies is a metal kind of fabric that people will drape over their bed. And I actually recommend those. If you're in a really rural area and you're sensitive to this stuff, that's like the only way you're going to get a good night's sleep is, and unfortunately I think like Les EMF sells them at about $1,000 price range. But when people are sick and they just want to be able to sleep again, you're going to spend $1,000 to sleep well. The issue though, just like with the clothing, is if you roll over and you touch that canopy, it's blocking all of those signals and it's resting there. So now you've just created what's called contact current, and now it's running through your body. So that's why I always tell people, I am so happy. If anybody ever has questions on products, send me an email. I don't want people spending money on things that don't work, which is why I don't talk about things that I can't prove unless I'm asked like you did.
Final question on that line. What about like grounding pads and grounding mats and things of that nature?
So they will actually, and I want to keep this a simple answer because I could talk at length about it. They will actually make it worse because if you're in America. If you're in Germany, go for it. And that's a whole separate topic. But so grounding mats, especially if you have dirty electricity in your home, and then you're plugging this grounding mat into the outlet, and I've tested it. You will stand on it, and I will measure the voltage running through your body now. So it's really unfortunate because people will spend thousands of dollars sometimes on these really expensive grounding equipment. And maybe it was developed in Germany and they're on a different grid system than us, so it has a different effect. But man, when you use them in America, I would not do that unless you have filters installed in your home to eliminate that dirty electricity. Now, what people can actually do, and I don't always mention this because it makes me sound crazy, but it'll help people. What people can actually do instead is simply take either the shielding material that I have on my website, or you can use tinfoil, aluminum foil, and you can actually stand on it. And it acts like a discharge. People will feel the energy float, like all this excess stuff. They feel it kind of release into this tinfoil. You can use it forever. And yeah, it's totally weird, but the way I do it, and my 3-year-old son does this. Every time we brush our teeth, we just have this little piece of tinfoil that's under a counter, and we stand on it. And again, you can test it. You can show that it works, even though it does sound completely crazy. But that's a very cheap way to achieve the same goal.
And grounding in general, right? Standing on the ground, that
Yes.
protects you from EMF in a big way, correct?
Unfortunately, I have to give you two answers to that question.
Okay.
It can be very helpful. It absolutely can be very helpful. When I was sick, that is something I did 100%. However, the caveat to that is that there are instances where we run into something called contact current that runs through the ground. And that's because we've got such an inefficient grid system set up in the United States. So energy in general, like it leaves the grid system, travels through wires, powers your home, and in theory should travel back through a neutral wire back to the grid system. And because we haven't installed a thick enough neutral wire, energy will travel in the most efficient way possible. So it will actually exit your home, a lot of times through like a water intake pipe, it travels that way. Mm-hmm. It'll exit your home, travel through the ground, and rather than installing that extra neutral wire or the thicker wire, instead what our energy company has done is installed grounding rods along, you can actually see them, like you'll see along these power lines. And so then the energy travels through the ground and up these grounding wires. So there is a percentage of people that will be outside barefoot thinking they're doing something good for them. But if I hooked them up to a voltage meter, I'll read the energy flowing through their body from the ground. The crazy part about this, so Dave STETZER, my colleague, he was called in to a farm in Wisconsin of all places, that their dairy cows, and these cows, their milk production drastically decreased, and any animals that were born had major birth defects and weren't living. And unfortunately, even the family, the wife, kept having miscarriage after miscarriage, but had successful pregnancies earlier. So he was called in because the farmer thought, the only thing that's changed is the fact that they've installed a new power station right by us. And so he was able to go there, and then Dave was able to go to the farm and measure the contact current running up the cow's leg and down the other side. And he's been involved with tons of lawsuits around this topic. And he's won millions of dollars for families that have been affected by this stuff. So unfortunately, that was a very long-winded answer, but I can't tell you without testing whether or not grounding in your yard is safe. And along those lines, if somebody really wants to know, you actually work with, you remember I mentioned my niece. So my niece passed away. Her dad, who, his degree is in physics, her dad now for a living tests homes, and he can do it virtually. He mails you equipment, you turn it on, you take a measurement, he'll send you filters, he just takes care of the whole thing, because that's his passion now. He just doesn't want other family members to go through this. So if people really want to dive into this and have an expert, because he trained with Dave Stetzer on this topic after everything happened, if you want to know your specific environment, just like I did, but I spent lots of money to do it, you can work with him. And so that's just called a virtual home inspection. And I've got information about that on my website that you can look at. And I think the price is $750, but that includes all of your filters and your meters and him mailing out hugely expensive equipment, with a little insurance policy on it. So even though it sounds like a lot of money, it's including a lot of the things that you're going to need in order to fix whatever he tells you to.
Holy moly, Dr. Libby, we're going to need to have you back on the podcast. but today we have met our limit. So my final few questions. Number one, how can our audience get in touch with you?
Yes. So I'm going to give you two things. One's my email, and then one is a place where you can go to get my top 10 EMF action steps. A lot of people are probably feeling overwhelmed. Don't be overwhelmed. Get the list, print it off, and just start with your light bulbs. Have it in front of you and just knock one thing out at a time. Think of this as a long-term play, not like a sprint to the finish line. So that website is my website, Revived Living. So it's revivedliving.com/EMF. And that will give you that top 10 action step guide. And then I'll actually email you links with that have, where I go to get these things, how I travel and the stuff I use, and what products I like, what products I don't, all that stuff. So that's a great place to start first off. And any questions that people have, I am more than happy to do so. You can contact me through my website, revivedliving.com, or my personal email is Dr. Libby, so DrLibby @revivedliving.com.
That's great. Thank you. And final question that I ask all our guests that I interview: from waking to sleep, what is your daily routine?
Oh, yes. I'm such a fan of my morning routine. Oh, my gosh. It's like my favorite thing in the world. And if I don't have it, my whole life falls apart, I feel like. So I get up before anybody else in my house and work out first thing, because if I don't work out first thing in the morning, it just won't happen. And I make my coffee and I make my smoothie, and then I make breakfast with my son once he's up. He's 3, and that's like our main time together because I work so much. So I make breakfast with him, and then I go to work for about 12 hours. And but that morning routine, and I spend some time with God, and I always do half an hour of reading every day. That's why I work as hard as I do, because it motivates me to really want to help people. So then I work 12 hours a day, come home exhausted, and do it all over again.
I hear you. Great answer. Well, thank you very much. And I wasn't joking. We're gonna have to have you back on again for sure.
Absolutely. Would love to.
My name is Dr. Noah DeCoyer, your co-host, and you are listening to the Beyond Your Wildest Dreams podcast. If you like what you've heard today, please share this with your friends and encourage them to subscribe on iTunes. Leaving a review and rating on iTunes helps us move up the charts and helps more people find us. You can subscribe to our incredible weekly email at www.beyondyourwildestgenes.com. Thank you, and as my oldest son Hayden says, be awesome and never unawesome.
1, 2, 3, 4, get my shoes and out the door. 5, I'm alive. 6, 7, 8, feeling great.